We're all storytellers in our own ways, whether you're in front of the camera as a reporter or behind the camera, directing, filming, editing, or producing. My name is Rihanna Dizon, and today I will be pulling back the curtain and diving deep into the stories of those who work behind the scenes. It is an honor to welcome my first guest, award-winning director, producer, cinematographer, journalist, CEO, and my professor at Pepperdine, Mark Jacobs.
Hi.
Hello, good morning. I'm so happy and excited to have you here. I know I mentioned you're a director, producer, CEO. I mean, the question here really is, what don't you do?
Well, I think the better way to say is I'm just a storyteller, period.
Yes.
Makes it a lot easier.
Yes. And I just want to know, where did this all begin? Where did your love for filmmaking start? When did it start?
I'd have to say at my grandparents' house, just watching TV. I mean, it just captivated me, and starting off as a journalist, watching a lot of the old school journalism from Walter Cronkite and different, old school people from the 70s, and just gravitated into a news station.
Yes, being a student in your classes, I've gotten to know a lot about your love for filmmaking. I know that you said you started your first documentary at 10 years old. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, a buddy of mine, when I was in grammar school, he had a Super 8 film camera, 8mm, and it was his dad's. And he just said one day, let's go shoot a little movie. I was like, okay, don't know what we're doing, but great.
And you are from Las Vegas?
Yeah, born and raised.
Yes, and you mentioned that at 14 years old, you had your first job in the industry, I believe as a camera operator for CBS.
Yeah.
What was that like, being 14? I mean, just being that young and being immersed into that environment right away.
Well, I think more than anything, it was, again, the love that I had for just being in the studio. One of our students this semester walked in one morning, and it was day one of this class, and he was just looking at all the lights, and it reminded of when the first time I went into a studio. And it's like you just have this passion, this hunger for it. And so back then, at 14 years of age, I'd hung around so much, they eventually built a brand new building. And they said, thanks for helping us move, but you can't come in anymore because we have security and you have to know the pass, but here's a piece of paper, it's called a job application, fill it out, we'd like you to work.
So what is something that you wish you knew about the world of filmmaking? Or I guess another way I can ask this is, if you could give advice to anyone who wants to be in this world, what would you give them?
Just have a hunger for it.
Right. You mentioned your daughter. I know that you have two grandsons. You talk about them in class all the time, the twins. How have they kind of just impacted your life or your career in any way?
I think more than anything, I think we're in a crazy world. I think we've been in a crazy world for as long as this world's been around. It's ever changing. Because of my faith, I truly trust that God's going to put me on a path that He wants me on, and I know there's a greater purpose, His purpose in it. And so I trust in that. I lean on Him for that.
Yeah, I think that the beauty of filmmaking and storytelling, I mean, it's ultimately your art. Mm-hmm. And I can tell how passionate you are just by how you're talking to me. And I wanted to ask you more about the work you've done involving with your church. Mm-hmm. How has your faith impacted your career and kind of guided your life, and also some of the inspiring work that you've done within the church?
Well, you're asking questions that I could be here all day answering, but just in a real quick nutshell, there's, 10 years ago when I came to Christ, I came with all this knowledge, and I'm working on all these crazy shows, Basketball Wives, Football Wives, all these different shows. And there's a lot of darkness in a lot of those shows. And so being a new Christian and maturing and just getting to have a relationship with God, it was just like, okay, I'm going to bring every storytelling talent I have to my church, and we're going to tell stories and testimony. And I did that. I did 32 of them, and it was great. But it was more about what I wanted to do and less about what He wanted to do with me. And the minute, about 5 years into it, I started realizing that through my maturity and my faith. And I just kind of kicked back a little bit and said, okay, you already know me, you made me, you've given me everything I have. You run it, I'm just going to be patient.
Right. And reflecting on the 38 plus years of experience that you have in this industry, has there ever been a time where your job has made you cry?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I still remember the first person that I saw that was killed in a car accident. It was a teenager. You know, if I close my eyes, I see it plain as day. And I think covering 2 wars and, you know, being in Sarajevo and watching these bombs fall on the ground, crack open, and all these toys fall out, and these children run towards it, and they're all hand grenades, and they were basically ethnic cleansing that country at that time in the 90s. And being there as a solo journalist, a one-person band, having to cover that, I mean, every night I'd just lose it. But, you know, thankfully I don't have any PTSD, but there have been stories too that are very simple, one-on-one stories that just impact your life. You know, you do a story on a little boy who is getting horrible grades in grammar school, and he's afraid to say anything to anybody, and everybody thinks he's dyslexic, and they find out that both of his eyes, the covering on his eyeballs is warped, and he can't see. And so you have an opportunity to tell that story. What does that look like to the viewer? How can you, with a camera, say this is what he's seeing? And then you go through the surgery of him having a complete transplant from a child that was killed in a car accident, and you shoot the surgery of his corneas being replaced.
Wow.
And then you're there the day he pulls the bandages off, and he can see clearly, and you see his reaction. You can't help but tear up at that. And you're right there. You're allowed that access to be able to tell a story like that, and it impacts people, and it changes people's lives. And so, yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've cried, but also out of joy too, not just always out of sadness.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk about the film you made, Jesse's Story. It was a documentary about a young athlete with a promising career, cut short by a surfing accident, and he now adjusts to life as a quadriplegic. I just want to ask you to walk me through your filmmaking process. How do you begin? How do you show raw emotion in the film? Just walk me through what that's like.
Again, another question that can take
That could take forever, I'm sure.
It's really the process of talking to people on camera, understanding who your subject is. In 5 minutes of time meeting Jesse, everything changed for me. I went there because it was Kelly Slater's birthday. You know, multiple-time world champion at surfing. I'm a surfer. Rob Machado, another great surfer. Pat O'Connell was in, you know, Endless Summer. And so I saw all of those things on the surface and was just like, oh, we're going to go shoot a guy trying to surf who can't walk. Okay. So I meet him, and all that went away. All the celebrity went away. And we just hit it off. And in watching his ability to get on a surfboard and surf like overhead waves at Cardiff Reef blew my mind. And so I did a piece. I asked the reporter, I'd love to do this just as a standalone piece, not just with a reporter track. And I made a longer version, went and met with him, gave it to him, and he was still going to San Diego State at the time. And I said, does anybody want to do a documentary on you? And I'd never done a feature doc. I was still in news. I was not where I'm at today, obviously. And so we started shooting, and for 8 years I would shoot every event that he surfed at, US Open, World Championship of Surfing in Huntington Beach. I would shoot him setting up his little pop-up tent and selling t-shirts and speaking to elementary schools, meeting Christopher Reeve. He called me one day and said, hey, do you want to go dive with some great white sharks? I'm going to go do that. I'm like, yeah, I'm on board. So we go out, and for 48 hours, we're out diving with great white sharks in a cage, with first time ever for a quadriplegic. Or he wants to go to Fiji and get barreled in a wave. It's all these things my process is getting to know somebody through conversation and just seeing their heart, and then sitting down with a camera and doing the same thing.
Well, we definitely see your heart through your work, and especially through Jesse's Story. I mean, it was the opening film at many film festivals, including Beverly Hills, Malibu, San Diego, and even in Australia, so that's a huge deal. But thank you so much for your time today, Mark. I'm sure we could sit here and talk all day, but when we come back, we are going to hear from another professional in this industry.
I take the shuttle every day to get around Pepperdine's hilly campus. Here we go. The shuttle is a great way to see people all over the campus. Obviously, some people choose the harder route. And now we're off to class. You know what really ruins my day? Smelly people. Don't want to end up like this guy? Take the Pepperdine Shuttle, courtesy of shuttle drivers everywhere. Thanks, Nick.
My next guest is someone who's fluent in television production technology. He has countless work experiences as a director, studio operator, and operations manager for companies like CNN, CBS, and TMZ. And he is now our technical operations specialist at Pepperdine, Sergio Marquez.
Hi.
Hi, Sergio. Good morning. How are you doing today?
Good. Yourself?
How does it feel to be on camera?
It's weird, I'm not used to this being on this end of it, so
Yes.
we'll see what happens.
And you have worked in various entertainment avenues, as I've mentioned, including big stations like TMZ, and now you're at Pepperdine.
Yes.
But where did this desire for storytelling come from?
Oh, I don't know. When I was young, I was fascinated with the idea of capturing moving images, and I was fascinated with cameras, so
Yeah.
it seemed natural when I started studying it in college, so yes.
Yeah. So what age would you say you picked up a camera
Wow.
for the first
I was
time?
really, really young. I was 10 or 12 years old when my
Wow.
dad bought a video camera, and
Wow.
I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So, the idea
And-
that you could record on such a small device.
Yes. And flashing forward to your college years, I know you went to University of Las Vegas, studied communications. What was your experience like in college? Did you do filmmaking there? Did you have internships?
Yes, I was. I went to community college for a couple of years just to gain my residency in Nevada, and then I went to Las Vegas to UNLV, and I immediately got into it. I immediately started I was a studio rat, they called me. I would hang around in the studio and help out whatever they needed, and learned a whole bunch that way. The first real experience I had with the real production was a city council meeting. They had the city council meetings in the studio at UNLV, and they also did a little show based on the city council meetings, and I got to work with the mayor of Las Vegas at the time, and 3 city council members. Was really cool because I got to build all the lighting for it. I learned how to do lighting then, and I got to run a camera, which is really fun for, a little show, a little
Yeah.
call-in show that they did, which was great. That was my real first experience with it.
Is there a position that you would say you enjoyed the most, or maybe
I had the most fun when I was directing in San Francisco, because that was where I won an Emmy Award. So that was fun.
Nice. Yeah. What could you say was the most stressful job that you've done?
Well, the TMZ had some very, very fast-paced movement. We were doing, when I left, 4 shows a day.
Wow.
And when I got there, we were doing 2. So 6 years later, we were doing 4 shows. And that doesn't include the little
my
webisodes. Doesn't include all the little tiny things that we did. So yeah, that was very, very fast-paced and very high pressure sort of situations.
4 shows a day. How long would that take? Like, is that just like from
10
morning
hours.
to night?
10 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, we banged them out, and 6 o'clock in the morning, not even that, 5:30 in the morning. We started at 6. We wouldn't be done till 3 o'clock.
That is really intense.
Tell me about it. Yes.
Yes. What is a common misconception about working behind the scenes that you
It's
wish
all
to
fun.
correct?
Everybody thinks it's fun, and sometimes it is. When you first start, it's more of a challenge or a calling, if you will. But after a while, it does become a job. After a while, it becomes a little stagnant, and you got to figure out a way to make it better.
Yeah.
You got to figure out what makes it exciting.
And I would also add that it's a high pressure industry for
Yes.
sure. So how do you kind of keep calm or keep your composure during those high pressure moments?
This is going to sound really bad, and I admit that it sounds bad, but it's just something that I live by. The things that I do, the things that I put together, the things that I did were done the minute I finished with them, and I could not change them in any way. That was the best thing. I realized this when the first time I directed a show and I hacked it up. I just did a horrible job. But I knew that, guess what? There's going to be another one tomorrow that I will be able to redeem myself. And that was the best thing I did. I shake it off.
Yeah, just roll with the
Because
punches.
you can't change that. Live television, you can't fix it.
Right.
There's no way to fix it.
So I want to go back to the Emmy Award that you mentioned that you received. What was that for?
Directing. We had it was a local Emmy Awards. So it was a newscast at 4:30 in the afternoon, and the whole show was nominated for an Emmy Award, and I won that part of it, the directing part of it.
Oh, that's awesome! Congratulations.
Yeah, it was great. I won the award and carried the trophy around for about a week, and because it was, I'd never won anything like that. I took
Yeah.
it with me to work.
Is it in your office here?
No, it's at home.
Oh,
at
you
home.
should bring it in here so we can all see it. Yeah.
I'll take a picture for you.
Perfect. So with that being said, do you believe that the magic goes away when people understand the work that goes on behind the scenes, or do you think working behind the scenes creates its own magic within itself?
I think people are still mesmerized by what happens. I mean, you watch a football game with all that goes on, and the Super Bowl with all that happens, and you realize, and you think, wow, how does that happen? Well, I do anyway.
Right.
How do they do that?
Yeah. And in this industry, you work with so many people, lots of different kinds of people. What are some things you've learned about people in this industry and, working together? What are some things that you could take away?
The most important thing I've learned is patience. Not everybody knows what you know. Not everybody is the same level of intensity as you are. Not everybody believes what you believe. And sometimes you have to convince them of what you believe, and sometimes you just have to accept that they don't believe you, or it doesn't matter to them. It's not important to them.
Right. And now that you've transitioned as our technical operations specialist here at Pepperdine, what are some things that you've learned from the students that you've met here?
Oh, you guys teach me something every day. I learned that maybe I should slow down and show you something more patiently.
Right. I mean, it's no secret that you are very involved on campus in the journalism department, the communications department, or just when anyone has a technical issue or question. I know for Newswaves, I always come to you if I have any questions. What has your experience been like with Newswaves, our student newsroom here, considering
Newswaves.
you've worked in actual newsrooms?
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to watch you guys learning and doing your thing and making decisions. It's so much fun because you guys are you're new to it, and that's so great to see because you guys have this energy that I haven't seen in decades, I love it. I think it's great.
And now just reflecting back in all the years in your career, what can you tell me was the highlight of your career? One of the first things that comes to mind when I ask you that.
Well, the thing that I'm most proud of that nobody knows anything about because it happened so long ago, in San Francisco, we did a show based on, it was 2003, and it was 2 years into the Afghanistan war, and there was a lot of PTSD, kids coming back, soldiers coming back, and they were experiencing trauma in their families. So we did a show based on that, a standalone special edition, and I was tasked with putting the whole show together, not producing it, but the producer came to me and said, this is what I want it to look like, this is what I want it to feel like, this is what I want it to be. I said, I can translate that. I can translate to on camera. I can give you that. And we put that together, and it was something I was very proud of. I mean, I don't even remember the name of it, but I remember working on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like very important work to moments
You think
of history.
it's important, but it's not. It's when it comes down to it, it's entertainment.
Right.
So,
If you could give advice to anyone who wants to work in this field, what would you give them?
believe in what you're doing. You're going to be doing this for a while. You don't know anything right now, but you will, and if you believe in yourself, you'll succeed.
Right. What inspires you?
You, students, young people that want to learn, people that want to do these things. That's what makes you get up in the morning.
Right. Okay, and my final question to you is just how would you say that your career has shaped your life in any way or made you who you are?
I don't know that my career has done that. My career has made me, it's made me a better person because I actually like to do what I do. I actually like to do this. Believe it or not, yes, I like to do this and somebody pays me to do it, which is great. So that's made me happy. It's made me be able to tolerate everything else that goes on.
All the madness.
Yes.
And the stress.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sergio.
You're welcome.
After the break, we're going to hear from both Mark and Sergio about how their professional careers have crossed.
What makes a perfect breakfast burrito? Perhaps it's the precise combination of ingredients, masterfully crafted to bring the maximum amount of flavor in every single bite. But come on, surely something like that doesn't exist. Or does it?
Let's welcome back both of our guests as we learn more about their transition to the classroom and how they've inspired each other. My first question for you guys is, what made you want to give back and start teaching?
Well, I'm not a teacher, but what made me want to give back is I worked at TMZ. And TMZ was a place where the dollars matter, where nobody cares about the individual. Money is the important thing. And I wanted to change that. I wanted to give back to young people today. And I wanted to share my knowledge.
Yeah, I think for me, having done this for so long, there's so much up here. And it just, when I move on to wherever I go next, hopefully heaven, it's all going to go away. It's not going to be shared. And I just feel like anytime we're in a position of being able to mentor or share, especially with young people coming up through the business and coming from the side of in a working environment as a teacher, it's imperative that we share that knowledge, and it's used. And it's not gone to waste.
Would you guys say that this was a difficult transition?
Yes.
How so?
Yes, it was very hard. I came from an environment where we did just a ton of stuff on a day-to-day basis, and this is completely the opposite. Where things happen at a very glacial pace, where you're teaching students who don't know. Forgive me for saying this, but you don't know anything.
We don't.
And we have to teach them everything
Right.
that we know, and that takes time. That takes a lot of time.
Right. I mean, speaking from my experience, I was in your Journalism 270 class through the pandemic, and I was telling stories with my iPhone. And then coming back here now, I'm finally learning how to use the cameras, and it's definitely an adjustment. But when you guys think back to when you were growing up and starting your filmmaking career, did you guys have classes like this, or like opportunities like this?
Yes, absolutely. UNLV, that's how I learned. That's where I got all my experience. Well, not all my experience, but my first experiences with it.
Yeah. My next question is just, how have you both inspired each other?
Professor Jacobs is how do you say this? He knows a lot. I mean, he has a ton of experience, and the things that he knows are so vital, is so important to this program that we clicked automatically because he just knows so much.
I couldn't agree more, but more on his side, not mine. I just feel like it's when he comes in the morning, I always make it a point to come in and say good morning. If it's Monday, because our class is on Monday, he's here right when we're here. And it's always good to hear that he had a good weekend. And we've already kind of gone down that memory lane of Las Vegas, having been born and raised there. And we know a lot of the same people in the industry. It's a very small industry, and there's not a lot of people that you immediately gravitate to and respect as much as I've respected him in meeting him as well. And the knowledge that Sergio has, don't let him cut himself short. He has a ton upstairs, and I'll take any knowledge because I love to learn. And as he said in his interview, I'm learning from all of you as much as I want to give back too. We learn things
Also, it goes both ways.
Wow, I wish I'd said that.
Well, you said something like that.
Yes, I feel like with the combined knowledge both of you have, you probably have this secret language that none of us would understand.
We do. We have a shorthand almost. Did you see that? Did you know this and that? I'm like, yeah. I mean, and sometimes people hear what we're talking about from my office, and I know that I've seen those looks on people's faces. Like, I don't know what you were talking about, but you certainly sounded like you knew a lot about it. Like, okay. They never say that, but that's the look on their face.
That's funny. Remind me when that happens again. I didn't know what was happening. No.
And people are afraid to ask because they quite frankly wouldn't understand it.
Sometimes I don't even know how to ask. I'm
exactly,
like,
and that's the other thing. They don't know what to ask. So.
What would you say is the hardest thing that goes on behind the scenes that people would be surprised to know?
On set or here at
Behind the
Pepperdine?
scenes, just in any workplace.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to ask, make sure.
Go.
I think it's going to happen in this class. It happens to me anytime that I have a tough time remembering names. Ask Kalaya, if I remembered her name. It's difficult for me because I have so many crews and so many people on those crews. And sometimes crews are 5 people, sometimes they're 130 people. And as a director, as a cinematographer, director of photography, you have to know everybody's name. You want to respect that. And if you care enough to know somebody's name, they feel cared for.
Well, I don't have that. I'm not even sure what the question was. Can you do the question again?
Yeah, no worries. What is the hardest thing that goes on behind the scenes that people would be surprised to know?
Oh, wow. That it's a lot more complicated than actually when it looks. The hardest thing is putting together a really large production, or even a small production for that matter, and you spend hours and hours and hours, and it's dismissed so easily because people think it's so easy to do. That's the thing that drives me crazy. People see something on television. The Adele interview the other night. Somebody said to me, "Wow, that looks pretty good. I wonder, it looks so easy to do." I was like, "Are you kidding me? That took them weeks, nonstop, 12 hours a day, 15 hours a day to do that. In 2 locations, maybe 3 locations. That was incredibly difficult to do, incredibly expensive to do. And I don't think anybody realizes that."
So what would you both say has been your biggest takeaway from your career working behind the camera?
I don't know if there's one thing. There's many things. It was a great way to spend a life. It was so much fun and so tragic at the same time, and there was so many highs and so many lows. But I remember every single one of them, and I treasure all those memories.
Yeah, I think it's the people that I had the opportunity to meet. You know, going to boxing press conferences in Vegas and sitting next to Muhammad Ali, and him and I actually getting to know each other. It's Muhammad Ali. And I don't get starstruck by that, but my father remembered that and remembered coming with me to the airport and seeing him come down an escalator and him yelling out my name when all the press was at the bottom of the escalator. And my dad was with me because he wanted to come and see Muhammad Ali. I forgot about that when he passed away. My dad reminded me of that. So I think when you break down all the gear and all the lights and all the fun that we have together doing creative things, whether it's news, production, whatever, it's the people at the core. If you don't like people, this might not be a good business for you because that's what you're doing. You're working with people in front of the camera and back of the camera. I still work in it, and I'm still meeting great new people, but I'm having so much more fun being able to do this with students has just been, and then to have the gear to put something like this together and then have this hungry class wanting to do it and succeed at it, it's just amazing to me.
Right, yeah. Well, thank you both so much for sharing your stories with me today. I'm so grateful to know you guys and to work alongside with you on campus. But until next time on Pulling Back the Curtain.